Good evening, everybody. Today is a very special evening. It is the birthday of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Yud Aleph Nisan, the 11th day of the month of Nisan, which is tonight and tomorrow. It's a very special day. It's marked with celebration by Jews all over the world. We have Rabbi Friedman on the way, and we are excited to invite all of you to join us. Thank you for joining.
Who replaced the Lubavitcher Rebbe?
We all did. There was no replacement for Lubavitcher Rebbe. We are all now responsible to take his place and to take his mantle and to feel responsible like he did for every single Jew and for every single person and for the world as a whole. When he would send out emissaries and they would come back with reports and they would say, we had 50 Jews, we had 50 people show up, we had 100 kids. The Rebbe would say, how many kids are in your area? And they would say, I don't know, maybe 100,000. And the Rebbe says, you had 100 kids? Got to get to work. So it's very unusual that a Jewish leader takes responsibility like this for the Jewish people as a whole and for mankind. The Rebbe would write a letter on special occasions, and the letter was addressed to all Jews wherever they are. So the answer to the question of who took him over after he passed in 1994, the answer is every single one of us. Every single one of us has to feel that responsibility just like he did. And we have to be the ones to actually usher in the final redemption with the coming of Mashiach. But tonight is a special night, and it's good to have us, all our souls gathered here virtually to learn and to grow and to prepare for this amazing holiday of Pesach, Passover. They're all getting ready for. We have a international following. Is that correct? Yes, Ireland. Fantastic. Buffalo.
Arizona.
Arizona. We're in Arizona.
Coolidge, Arizona, between Casa Grande and Florence and between Phoenix and Tucson.
Ah, very good. We love Arizona.
Margate, New Jersey.
Fantastic. Not too far.
Framingham, Massachusetts.
Birmingham, Massachusetts. We know Birmingham, Alabama. Rabbi
Okay.
Friedman's oldest son is the rabbi in Birmingham, Alabama.
Framingham is just south of Sudbury, and Sudbury, Massachusetts was the shul of Rabbi Lawrence Kushner that every rabbi knows of.
That's right. That's right. You got it, Mark. Wonderful.
Yukon, Canada.
Where in Canada?
Yukon Territory.
Nice. Nice. We'll be in the Ontario area. Anybody in Ontario, Canada? Brooklyn. All right, not too far. There are Jews in Brooklyn. That's good to know. Fantastic. Where is David Block from? David Block, Alabama. Where is that?
Huntsville.
Huntsville. Very cool. All right. Not too far.
Not far from your brother.
There you go. Wonderful. My father should be there a couple days, spending Pesach in Birmingham. Okay, Rabbi Friedman's here. Sometimes we have an issue with the cameras.
You're talking about Birmingham?
Birmingham, Massachusetts. You got to be careful.
Oh, so you have to say it with the right accent.
That's true.
Birmingham or Birmingham? Good evening.
Good evening, Rabbi Friedman.
Hello
Very
there.
special day today. The Rebbe's birthday, 122 years, which would mean that the Rebbe was born in 1902. Without exaggeration, of course, the Rebbe revolutionized Jewish life all over the world. One of the Rebbe's big successful campaigns was encouraging people to have large families. I remember in the 60s, popular slogan was ZPG, zero population growth. Because the panic was that we're overpopulated, we're all going to starve, and we're all going to die from overpopulation. The Rebbe dismissed that and said, if you can have more children, you have more blessings, and why would anyone say no to a blessing? And it was so successful. Amazing, amazing. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about family and how it relates to the Pesach Seder, to the Pesach festival. There's something unique about the sacrifice that was brought specifically on this holiday, unlike any other holiday, which is the Paschal lamb. Even before the Jews left Egypt, God told them to take a lamb and to prepare it and to roast it. But the interesting instruction was not every family can consume an entire lamb. And you don't want to waste. So families should get together before the holiday and share the lamb. And anyone who did not join the group before the holiday may not eat from that lamb. That is very unusual. A co-op sacrifice. So it seems very obvious that this is meant to bring families together, to bring the community together. And it's an antidote, I guess, for the fact that in Egypt, families were torn apart. As is usually done with slaves, they separate husbands and wives, and they disrupt marital life. So to make up for that, the sacrifice that was brought on that occasion, and forevermore, as long as there's a temple and there are sacrifices, we have to emphasize family, community, children. Another unusual thing about Pesach is that you're supposed to tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt in response to your children's question. So there's another holiday, the holiday of Sukkot. The holiday of Sukkot is to remember for all generations that when God took us out of Egypt and led us through the desert or wilderness for 40 years, he protected us from the elements with temporary flimsy shelters. And so for the 7 days of that holiday, we move out of our home and we have all of our meals in this little hut with natural growth thatched roofs that protects us from the elements, but it's basically outdoors. So the Torah says, you should do this, have all your meals, live in this outdoor hut, so that all your generations will know that that's how I led you through the desert. But it doesn't say when your son will ask you why we're sitting in this hut, then you will relate the whole story of how God took us out of Egypt, took us through the desert for 40 years, we needed to be protected. It doesn't say anything about a child asking. It's so that all generations would know, with or without a child asking. But when it comes to the Pesach Seder, you should tell the whole story to your children when they ask. Again, the emphasis on the children, more even than on the adults. The adult mitzvah is a response to the child's question. To make it even more interesting, the Torah says this 4 different times, in 4 different places in the Torah, because it's talking about 4 different kinds of sons or children. The smart one, the wicked one, the simple one, and the one that doesn't know how to ask. That's pretty detailed, personalized, an answer to each of the questions of each of the 4 types of children. Again, a lot of emphasis on children, on family. Even the old custom, one of the steps in the process of the Seder is that you break the middle matzah. You have 3 matzahs. You break the middle matzah, and you put the larger half, the bigger piece, you put it away for the dessert, afikoman. And the custom was that you tried to hide the afikoman. The children were going to try to find it and steal it, and then they'd return it to you because you need to eat it at the end of the meal, and they return it to you in exchange for some gift that they're going to demand. Chabad doesn't have that custom because the whole idea of stealing is a little foreign. Even though it's done in fun, it's not a good thing to introduce. But there is such a custom, and it was many, many, many years it was practiced. And why is that? To keep the children awake and interested. That's pretty desperate. Again, the emphasis on children. So one of the things we see in emphasizing children is the importance of answering their questions. So we have 2 a little surprising elements here. One surprising element is there's a wicked son, and he asks cynical, kind of hateful questions, and it's a mitzvah to answer his question. Why? Why don't you just ask him to leave the table until he learns some manners? No, we don't do that. In fact, we know from last year he's going to ask an obnoxious question. And he is invited to the Seder. We know he's going to be cynical. We know he's going to ask a wicked question. but he is an indispensable part of the Seder. What a great message. If you can't answer a child's question, you're going to lose the child. Because the child's question is not academic. The child's question expresses how the child feels about what's going on in the house. If you dismiss the question, you're dismissing the child. You're going to lose that child. I'm not important enough to get an answer to my question. And again, it's not a scholarly question. It's not a bookish question. It's a personal question. The child is literally saying, why do I have to do this? If you can't answer that, then the child doesn't feel like he's part of the family. So yes, it comes out cynical, it comes out wicked, dismissive, like, this is crazy. Why we shouldn't be, why do I have to do this? It's disrespectful, it's cynical, it's provocative. It almost begs for negative attention. And yet you can't dismiss it. You have to answer it appropriately. A harsh question deserves a harsh answer. But don't ignore, don't dismiss, don't lash out. Answer the question in the most effective way you know how. I'll tell you this story, maybe you've heard it. I was asked to speak. I'll make it a long story short. I was asked to speak to this woman who had suffered a terrible tragedy, was seriously depressed, refuses to talk to anybody, and has not left her little apartment where she lives alone. She hasn't left the apartment in over half a year. She hasn't seen daylight, sunlight. They arranged an appointment for me to speak to her and surprised me with the announcement that I have an appointment to speak to her. And I was really upset that they didn't ask me, they didn't warn me. You know, it's not comfortable to talk to somebody who is traumatized, and it's almost impossible to talk to somebody who is severely depressed. So to just go ahead and make an appointment, so I was quite upset. But she was expecting, I don't know how they got her to agree to talk to me, because she refused to talk to the local rabbis, and I was visiting. Anyway, I had no choice but to go. I go into this room, into this apartment. It's very depressing. The air is dead. This woman, she was not among the living. She had quit on life. There was no life in her eyes. There was no life in her voice. There was no life in her skin tone. She was not among the living. But she tells me what happened. 19-year-old son, car accident. His friends survived, he did not. And then she tells me what an incredible boy her son was. Every virtue, every good trait, such a mensch, so respectful, so helpful, so considerate. Lengthy, detailed description. What do you say? What could you possibly say? So I said, that sounds like one incredible person. What an incredible son you had. And you had him for 19 years. She was not at all impressed. Did not even like that. So I said, the shock, the surprise is what is so hard to live with. It was so sudden, out of nowhere. But imagine if there had been no shock. If God had come to you personally and said, there is a soul in heaven that needs to be born and needs to live for 19 years, and I'm looking for someone to be his mother. God comes to you and says, would you please be the mother of this child for 19 years? What would you have said? I was sure that she would say, yes. She says, absolutely not. So without thinking, I said, well, then it's a good thing God didn't ask you. The flood of tears opened up. She cried her grief out. And after 20 minutes, she was alive again. There was some life in her eyes. Her voice changed. She was among the living. I actually saw a resurrection. She came alive. It was the most amazing, the most incredible experience so far in my life. Afterwards, I was thinking how upset I was when they told me that they had made an appointment and hadn't even asked me. So I realized if they had asked me, you want to meet with this depressed woman and talk to her? I would have said, absolutely not. And it would have been the wrong answer. Because such an experience you don't have every day. So I decided that from now on, whatever project, whatever good deed somebody puts in front of me, I have to say absolutely yes. 12 years later, a similar event happens. I'm again traveling, I'm visiting a community, and they tell me, we made an appointment for you to talk to this couple who have suffered a terrible tragedy. They used to be the life of the community. They were the mainstay of the synagogue. But when they had this tragedy, they don't come to the synagogue anymore. They don't want to talk to anybody anymore. In fact, they want to leave and move out of town. But they agreed to talk to you, so you're going to talk to them. I had a flashback. I really didn't want to do it. But no choice. So I meet this couple. Beautiful, beautiful couple. Their tragedy was a 6-year-old girl. Their daughter suffered an aneurysm, which is very rare. And the aneurysm is like instantly fatal. She passed away very, very quickly, and they weren't home when it happened. The parents were not home. They showed me a picture of the little girl, an angel. And the father tells me he used to put on tefillin. He used to go to the synagogue. They used to observe Shabbat. No more. Angry at God? Interesting what he said. He says, you know why I'm so angry at him? Because I love him, and he stabbed me in the back. You know, you hear this, and what can you possibly say? He had spoken to every rabbi in town. He was done with that. He didn't want to hear anymore. So I had to be careful not to say the conventional wisdom, you know. So I said, has your daughter visited you yet? Well, that took him by surprise. He says, nobody ever asked me that. I said, well, has she? He says, yes, twice. I said, what did she tell you? He says, she didn't say anything. She just smiled. I guess to let me know that she's okay. So I said, she came twice because you didn't get the message the first time. She's trying to tell you more than I'm okay. She's trying to tell you that she could be okay, but you're not letting her. She's 6 years old. You don't grow older in heaven, by the way. If you're 6 years old when you pass away, you stay 6 years old. So she's 6 years old, alone, without her parents, and every 6-year-old needs a mommy and a daddy. Why did you quit on her? Why did you give up being her father? Why did you become this professional full-time griever or mourner when your daughter needs you? She certainly doesn't need to be the cause of your quitting on life. So you're not letting her be happy because you're blaming her for your misery, in a sense, right? I can't do anything anymore. I can't be a good Jew anymore because my daughter died. I said, why don't you go back to being her father and see what you can do for your 6-year-old daughter? This whole conversation took about 25 minutes. At the end of 25 minutes, he said, should I put on the tefillin here at the synagogue or should I wait till I get home? Again, a really incredible experience. To see that turn around from misery, depression, quitting, bitterness, back into life. But you see, now I understood the first story. I never really understood. What did I say to the first woman with her 19-year-old son? What did I say that made her cry like that? I asked her, would you agree to be this boy's mother if God had asked you without any surprises, up front, it's only for 19 years, would you be his mother? You said absolutely not. I said, well, then it's a good thing God didn't ask you. Why was that so powerful? But after the second story, I understood. She had stopped being his mother. She was too busy grieving. So when I said to her, it's a good thing God didn't ask you because you would have said no to your own son, she was shocked. The thought of saying no to her own son, I'd rather not have you. Whoa, that sobered her up and made her into a mother again. She went back to being a mother who lost her son. But not a permanent, chronic, professional griever. It just really demonstrates strongly, powerfully, even when there's a loss of life, there is no loss of relationship. You know, when you make a Misha Berach, when you call someone up to the Torah, how do you identify people in Jewish life? So-and-so, the son of so-and-so. That's how you identify people, either by their mother or by their father, depending on the occasion. Even after the father had passed away, even after the child had passed away, forevermore this child is Yitzchak, the son of Sarah. He is still the son, Sarah is still the mother. So this very, I think I mentioned this last time, this very emotional moment, the Rebbe was talking about the 4 questions. The 4 sons, ask the 4 questions. And traditionally, after the children ask the question, all the adults at the table ask the same questions of their father, who may already have passed away, who is now in heaven. But the exact wording is, Father, I'm going to ask you 4 questions. Or in Yiddish, Tate. The Rebbe was speaking about it, and the Rebbe said, it is very painful for a soul in heaven to re-enter earth. But when a child says, Father, I'm going to ask you a question, all the souls of the fathers in heaven come down to the Seder to hear the son's question. Rebbe was very emotional about it. For many years, the Rebbe was separated from his father by the communists. In fact, his father was not there at his wedding. Again, emphasizing, demonstrating the importance, the significance, and the indestructible family relationship. So a few suggestions. I know there are people who have a custom that the husband does not begin eating a course in the meal without first putting some food on his wife's plate. He serves his wife, then he starts to eat. Never eats before putting food on his wife's plate. My father, whose yahrzeit we just observed today, would never call my mother from another room in the house. When he wanted to talk to her, he would go to where she was. So he never called her by name. We didn't know her first name, because we don't call our mother by the first name, and we never heard our father calling our mother by her first name, because when he wanted to talk to her, he went to where she was. He didn't summon her from another room. Respect. It's not a secret, even though it doesn't get much press. What holds a couple together is not love. Love can actually cause separation. Love can destroy a relationship. Respect holds a couple together. And respect has never destroyed anything. It's like, I think I love you more than you love me, and this is not acceptable. But I've never heard anyone say, I think I respect you more than you respect me, and that's not acceptable. I never heard anyone say that. Because if you really do respect the other person, you wouldn't say that. Children learn to respect their parents. How? If the parents have to demand respect, you've basically lost the game. Children learn to respect their parents when they see how the parents respect each other. I mean, if mommy respects daddy, whoa, daddy must be special. And when the father demands and expects the children to be respectful of the mother, then the kids have respect for the mother. So parents should always emphasize to the children the importance of respecting the other parent. Don't demand respect for yourself. That puts you at a very awkward and disadvantaged position. If you have to ask children to respect you, something is not right. But if you're asking the children to respect the spouse, that is amazingly effective. This is the fabric of a family. Traditionally, and I still think it's a good idea, children never see physical affection between the father and mother. All physical affection is reserved for the bedroom. No hugging, no kissing, no holding hands. Intimacy is intimacy, and intimacy is private. Children should not see parents being physical to any degree. How then will the children know that the parents love each other? Well, the old-fashioned idea was, if the children don't see affection between mother and father, unless it is displayed physically, it's not working. It should not take a physical demonstration for the children to feel and sense the bond between father and mother that gives them their only security in life. Children feel very insecure. They're helpless little creatures. What does their security come from? the stability of the home. When they see the affection, the commitment, the thoughtfulness between the father and the mother, that is the most reassuring, most secure feeling that the children can have. And it should be much more convincing than a physical display. Very simply, you kiss your children and you hug your children and you hold your children. If you do the same with each other, it's not convincing. It's not necessarily adult affection because you do the same thing with the children. So unless you're being very intimate with each other, which is totally inappropriate in front of the children, children have to see the devotion of the parents in the way they talk to each other and the way they look at each other. Body language. It has to be coming out of every expression, out of every gesture. And so the physical expression of affection is totally unnecessary. So I'm not saying we should never show any affection physically, but it's certainly not necessary if you have real affection, real respect, real commitment. We learn in Kabbalah that God identifies himself as our Father. You are my children, you are my firstborn. I am a father to you. But in Kabbalah it says, God becomes our Father in the process of creation. He takes on the role of a father, the devotion, the love of a father. But that's not where it begins. It doesn't start with the love of a father. It starts with something greater and higher and more, where's the word? Where's the word? Not primitive. Anyway, it starts off with, like, God took us out of Egypt, brought us to Mount Sinai, and said, will you be my people? Will you be my children so that I can be your king and I can be your father? He took us out of Egypt, brought us to Mount Sinai, and there he became our father. What love motivated him to take us out of Egypt before he became our father? So it's interesting. It's like God chose us to be his children and to be our father. But choosing us came before the feelings of a father. You think of it this way. When does the relationship between a mother and a child begin? You can say, well, it doesn't begin until the baby is born. When the mother sees her baby for the first time, the maternal juices flow. She immediately falls in love with her baby. But did it really begin then? In the 9 months when she's carrying the baby, she's not deeply, strongly attached? So is it correct to say that love begins at birth? Now, is it correct to say that love begins at conception? A woman finds out she's pregnant, she's in love with her baby. But is that when it begins? How about when she decides she wants to be a mother? Isn't that when the love of her child begins? You can't love a child once you have the child, because what made you have him? What in the world motivated you to have a child? And it's not like, I want to have a child so that when he's born, I will love him. The love begins when you decide you want him, and you're not even pregnant yet. See, that's what the Kabbalah is saying. God says at Mount Sinai, let's agree to be a family. You'll be the children, I'll be your father. Oh, it didn't begin then. It began before he took us out of Egypt. That is what's so powerful about parents and children. The love is so primordial. It exists before anything else exists. Before you're actually a mother or father, before there's actually a child or even a fetus, there's an indescribable, unbreakable bond, which is what motivates people to even consider having children. Because if you don't love the thought, probably won't do it. So not only do we love children once they're born, not only do we nurture children in utero, we love the idea of children. We love the idea of parenting. So this particular holiday is so oriented, designed around children. Why? Because in Egypt, they were trying to destroy family life. They discouraged having children. And even after children were born, they drowned all the boys in the Nile. That can be quite discouraging. So you read in the Haggadah, one of the forms of torture is described as, I remember, affliction. They afflicted us. And the sages say, well, what is that describing? It already mentioned back-breaking work. It already mentioned inconsiderate demands. And then there's this other thing, this affliction. And the sages say what it's talking about is that they separated husbands from wives and they interrupted family life. They didn't allow intimacy between husband and wife. And then the sages say, where is this written? Where is it explicitly stated in the text of the Torah? Well, there's a verse that says, God saw the affliction and God knew. What in the world does that mean? Of course, God knew. So one of the interpretations is they were doing back-breaking work, and that was very difficult. God, it doesn't say God knew. They were unreasonable in their demands. It doesn't say God knew. But when they separated husbands and wives, God says, oh, I know. Not I know they did this to you. I know what that feels like. That I can relate to. Back-breaking work, I can't exactly relate to that. I've never felt that. But breaking up family, preventing intimacy, oh, that I know. That pain I experience too. When you ignore me, when you worship idols, when you go elsewhere for your needs instead of coming to me. So again, even God is feeling familial. When the Egyptians didn't allow families to function as a family, God says, oh, that pain I am familiar with. Because that affliction even I suffer from. Because you're not always loyal to me. That's an amazing statement. So that's what it means. God saw the affliction of the separations of husbands and wives, and God said, I know. Okay. Punchline. What is Exodus all about? What is Pesach all about? God comes and says, you're working very hard building cities for Pharaoh. You shouldn't be doing that. You should be working for me. I need you. So I'm taking you out and I'm going to meet you at Mount Sinai, and we're going to become partners in a very important project. God needs us to be his partner. Sounds a little strange, doesn't it? You're God. I'm sure you can handle it all by yourself. I'm sure you don't need my help. And yet, this is what God says. When you're raising children, don't give the impression that you take full responsibility for their lives and they need to do nothing. Don't even give the impression that you can have a perfectly good life without them. It's they who need you. You don't really need them. Moshe comes to Pharaoh and says, God sent me to tell you, let my people go so they can serve me. What an incredible statement. Let my people go so they can serve me. Wouldn't you expect God to say, let my people go? I love them. You can't do this to them. Doesn't say that. He says, let my people go so they can serve me. And Pharaoh laughed. What kind of God do you have? A God that needs you to serve him? Grow up. Egypt had hundreds of gods. They never serve a God. God serves them. The Nile is one of their gods. It waters their fields. The sun god, the sun keeps us warm, makes things grow. We don't do anything for the sun. Come on. Sure, you try to appease the sun. You don't want him to be angry at you, but you can't do anything for the sun. So when Moshe comes and says to Pharaoh, God wants his people to serve him, Pharaoh said, what kind of fantasy is this? And that's why he said no. Over and over, because each time Moshe came and said, God says, let my people go so they can serve me. Until finally it dawned on Pharaoh. No God exists to serve you. What kind of God is that? That makes you God. If God is here to serve you, then you are the God of your God. Once Pharaoh realized that, he said, well, then go. Why didn't you say so in the first place? So basically, the point is this. Children need to feel needed more than they need to feel loved. Love doesn't tell them who they are. Love doesn't give you an identity. Even the language, the child is your love object. What kind of identity is that? Who are you? My mother loves me. It's not an identity. If you're necessary, if you're needed in a relationship, in a job, in a role, it tells you who you are, gives you an identity. Children need to feel needed and necessary. So God comes to his children, and before he ever says, I love you, he says, I need you. Partner with me. And if we get along nicely, maybe I'll love you too. But that's the icing on the cake. Love is always the whipped cream, the icing. It's never the cake. Love is not life. But being necessary is life. You are essential to life. Then you are life. But if you're unessential and cute and lovable, that's insulting. It's insulting. to the human spirit. So at a very young age, and particularly these days, children are so smart, way, way smarter than we were at that same age, and articulate and fearless. Give a kid a credit card and he doesn't need you anymore. When he's 8. So these days, we really have to start young and make children feel necessary. Instead, all we do is promise them love. And it's not working. It's not working. So if the children are acting out and you go for therapy, the therapist says you have to love your children. I love my children. Well, love them more. It's not working. Stop it. If a child feels unnecessary, no amount of love can make up for it. On the contrary, the more you insist that you love the child, the more rebellious the child is going to get. Give children little responsibilities. Tell children that they need to serve God on their own, that they have a relationship with God on their own, directly to God, not through you. Tell children that God is depending on them to make this world a better place. It is amazing when children feel motivated by responsibility, capability. I'll tell you the story about the 12-year-old girl who was convinced that God was angry at her. When I spoke to her, I said, God is angry at you? And she says, yeah. I said, I'm so jealous. 12-year-old girl can get the creator of the universe angry? Wow. It's like, what, did you find kryptonite or something? You can get Superman upset and you're 12 years old? That is such a compliment to you. If God is angry at you, obviously, God noticed something you did. And something you did is significant enough to him to get him angry. How are you so important? How is what you do so important? Her problem was over. Yeah, God was angry at her, but what a compliment. When we tell children God gets angry, you're not trying to scare the child. You're demonstrating how important you are in this partnership with him. That's how we raise children. One final thought. Oh, time flies. Raise children. Interesting expression. Raise them. Not educate them, teach them, guide them. Raise them. What does that mean? Life basically is synonymous, practically, synonymous with pleasure. Life is pleasure, pleasure is life. The first stirrings of life is the sensation of pleasure. If all pleasure, I can't imagine how that could be, but if all pleasure is lost, the person does not survive. He doesn't have to kill himself. He will not survive without pleasure. If waking up in the morning holds no pleasure, a person does not wake up. It's almost impossible for life not to be pleasurable and for pleasure not to keep you alive. Why are some people suicidal? Because the pain covers up the pleasure and makes the person desperate to end the pain. He doesn't mean to end the life, because life is not painful. Things in life can be painful, so painful that you can't even locate the pleasure that is buried underneath the pain. But life itself is always pleasurable. Now, a baby is born, and the life that it experiences is the pursuit of pleasure, and the only pleasure the baby knows is touch and taste. Of the five senses, the pleasure that the child has is from touch and taste. Raising a child means don't leave them in that stage where their only pleasure comes from the two senses that are the lowest of the five. Raise them to the appreciation of a better pleasure, a greater pleasure, a more noble pleasure. For example, the pleasure of music. We sing to children. Very Jewish custom. Singing a child to sleep. And even more typical, singing at the dinner table. What a powerful message. We're sitting and eating. Yes, eating is a pleasure. But you know what else is a pleasure? Rhythm, song, music. So we sing with the children, and it works. At a certain age, a child enjoys singing more than he enjoys food. You have to tear a child away from their activity and force them to eat. They don't want to anymore. They're too busy living to take time out to eat. You've raised your child from the lowest level of pleasure to a better, higher, more refined pleasure. Then, as the child gets a little older, you raise them up to the next level. This is like the ladder that stands on earth and reaches into heaven. What is the ladder? Rungs of pleasure. So what is the next rung? Telling stories. That's the next thing we do with children. We read to them. And what is it we're supposed to read to them? Stories about great people who did great things. Heroes. Heroes who do really, really great things. Story about a person who was so kind. A story about a person who was so brave, so loyal, so smart. Children love it. You give children a candy, they may want a second one. They may want a third one, but that's it. You tell a child a story, they want to hear it again and again, read it again until you can't stand it anymore. But the child wants to hear it again. It gives more pleasure than food. In some way, it gives more pleasure than a song. How many times are you going to sing the same song? But hear the same story? Tell me again, read it again. The next rung is cultivating in the child the pleasure of understanding, of being intelligent, being smart. You ask a kid a riddle and he gets the right answer. The pleasure that that gives a child, like you're picturing this? They light up. I got it. I know. It is a greater pleasure than food and music and good character. Now it makes sense. You should give children a pleasure in good character and then cultivate the pleasure of intelligence, not the other way around. Don't skip steps. Because if you give a child the pleasure of being intelligent before you give him a pleasure in being good, you're going to have a very brilliant, evil kid. First, the pleasure of goodness, kindness, loyalty. Then, be smart so that you can be loyal intelligently. You can be kind intelligently. Finally, the highest level on the ladder is the pleasure of serving, of not living for yourself, living for a purpose and a cause. Take a look at the films of people protesting, marching, chanting, screaming, waving flags and placards, pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas. Look at how they leave the protest. It's over, and they're going home. Are they going home with pain in their eyes because of the poor, suffering Palestinians? No, they walk home looking smug. They did something for a cause. They don't care what the cause is. It's not the pain or the sympathy for the people suffering in Gaza. It's out of desperation for a cause. And now they felt like they served a cause. So whatever happens in Palestine after that, they couldn't care less. There's something compelling about that. Like, I would love to stop one of those protesters and say, don't you have anything to do at home? Shouldn't you be home eating dinner or something? People are disillusioned with the message of putting themselves first. Take care of yourself, love yourself, feed yourself, validate yourself. They can't stand it anymore. They want a cause. They want to serve. They want to feel needed. And nobody at home needs them. They're so desperate for a cause, they don't even bother to find out what the cause is. Everybody knows this, and everybody jokes about it. They're chanting from the river to the sea, from the river. Which river? They have no idea. They have no idea. Which sea? They have no idea. And they don't care. They just want to feel like they're involved in a cause. And then they go home feeling good about themselves. That's how vital the pleasure of serving is. Worth even getting arrested. So that's the story with the family affairs that is so obvious and so emphasized in this holiday. So we have the ladder of raising children. There's also a ladder of raising the relationship between husband and wife. There are steps, there are rungs. Don't start eating without first thinking of your spouse. Don't call each other from the other side of the house. It's so disrespectful. Don't need to hug and kiss in front of the children for the children to see, feel, and sense the devotion you have for each other. Those are rungs. Whatever rung we're on, we should be heading for the next one above it. And when it comes to that, God says, oh, that I know. A break in a relationship, a disloyalty in a family, oh, that pain I know. So let's give God pleasure instead of pain. Let's be a healthy people, a healthy nation to each other, healthy families, healthy children, and healthy Jews. Pesach is all of that. You eat matzah, you're a healthy Jew. You eat it with your wife, you're a healthy family. You get your children curious and answer their questions, you're raising good kids. It's all there. So, have a wonderfully inspiring, meaningful, satisfying, liberating celebration of this holiday. And we should all come out of this free from all the old habits that are not healthy, free from all the thinking that wasn't helpful to the family, to the children, to the relationship, free of all things that keep us from being what God needs us to be. His partner in making this world godly. We've been doing it for 3,300 years. We should be pretty close to completion now. A mitzvah more, one more good deed, could be all it takes. We're living in a very exciting time. We're about to witness the closure of a 3,300-year-old project. And when that project is done, the world is perfect. Even people protesting pro-Hamas feel it. They feel it. And they're desperate to be part of that process, but unfortunately a little confused. Thank you for listening. Let's talk again after the holidays and see where we're at. Only good news.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Friedman. Kosher, Freilich, and Pesach, you and your family should be gesund. And we'll look forward to more inspiration and learning after the Chag. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And we're wishing you all the best. Enjoy your matzah. Enjoy your maror. Be sure to enjoy the Seder. Invite as many people as you can. And we'll look
Sell
forward.
your chametz before.
That's right. Sell your chametz before. You go on Chabad.org or reach out to your local Orthodox rabbi. And we'll look forward to hearing a lot of good news. If you need any help, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we will help you as best as we can. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Send a cook.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Meals on
Whoa,
Wheels.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank
you.
Chag Sameach.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a happy Pesach.